The response from Republican governors to President Biden's latest federal COVID vaccine mandates have been on another level. South Carolina's governor said he'd fight Biden and his party to the gates of hell. Mississippi's governor called for freedom from tyrants. It makes the "see you in court" from South Dakota's governor sound, frankly, a little weak. So with all these governors seemingly certain they have the legal high ground, are Biden's mandates even legal? In September, Biden announced a whole slew of measures aimed at getting more Americans vaccinated. They included mandates for healthcare workers as well as for federal workers and contractors. But the measure that's been the lightning rod of this debate is one that will affect around 80 million Americans, requiring private employers with more than 100 employees to mandate vaccines or regular testing.
What is the line in the sand other than being forced to inject something into your body?
On top of all the Republican governors threatening biblical fights, 24 Republican attorneys general wrote an open letter to Biden saying the workplace vaccine or test requirement was illegal and that they'd seek every available legal option in response. But this is all a little premature. Biden tasked OSHA to issue an emergency standard, and they haven't drafted it yet. It's hard to challenge the legality of a rule that doesn't technically exist.
Generally speaking, any federal mandate has to meet constitutional requirement, and there are going to be two kinds of claims against them. One, there's going to be a claim that this is beyond the power of the federal government. Second, there will be a constitutional claim based on violation of individual rights. That's probably the weakest claim because the standard that will be applied to it is the Jacobson standard. In 1905, the Supreme Court passed Jacobson versus Massachusetts, and in that case, the Supreme Court says, basically, your rights can be limited. Your individual liberties can be limited in the public health as long as the limit meets some condition. Most importantly, that it's a reasonable limit. And the chances are that most courts would find a vaccine or test requirements during a pandemic to be reasonable.
Biden's mandates are just the latest layer in a patchwork of mandates and bans on mandates that have cropped up across the US. More than 1,000 college campuses have some form of vaccine requirement for students and staff. More than 200 hospitals and health systems have mandated vaccines for their employees. Some of these are being challenged in court, where they've mostly been unsuccessful. After Houston Methodist Hospital became one of the first to implement a vaccine mandate, a lawsuit filed by employees claiming the mandate was unconstitutional failed. 153 employees ended up resigning or being fired. Justice Amy Coney Barrett turned down a request from a small group of Indiana University students to block the university's vaccine mandate, which had previously been upheld by a federal judge. And late last month, a federal appeals panel gave the go-ahead to New York City to mandate the vaccine for public school teachers and staff, a mandate that doesn't include an option to get tested instead. But that doesn't mean all lawsuits against these mandates are doomed to fail.
I'm following over 20 lawsuits across the United States challenging either university mandates or employer mandates on constitutional ground and on statutory ground. So on the claim that these mandates violate personal liberty and on the claim that these mandates are in tension with the EUA law, the Emergency Use Authorization law, the challenges had very little success. But on the other hand, we are seeing some other signs on one area, which is freedom of religion.
For us who choose not to, we put our faith in the Lord.
And part of what's going on is the lower court are reflecting confusion over Supreme Court jurisprudence that did not give full guidance. Until October 2020, the Supreme Court jurisprudence said that if you're imposing a general, neutrally applicable law, you do not have to give a religious exemption. Since October 2020, the Supreme Court has increasingly indicated that it may be tightening protection of religious freedom, and it may be requiring religious exemption in contexts that did not previously require it. So lower courts are confused. They're not sure how much protection they need to give to religious freedom, and they're not sure whether they have to give a religious exemption. They're looking for guidance.
19 states plus DC have vaccine mandates in place for state workers, and 8 have banned them. Some of those states have exemptions for healthcare workers, and some don't. One state, Montana, has gone even further, banning private employers from setting any vaccination requirements. Biden's mandates will take precedence over the state's rules, but there's a lot of people who will be caught in between. If you're an employer in Montana with fewer than 100 employees at your business and you want your staff to get vaccinated, you're basically out of luck. And whether they're legal or not, there's every chance the mandates aren't as effective as Biden and his administration are hoping if everyone chooses the second half of the ultimatum.
Not only are not all businesses captured by the federal requirement, the federal requirement is a vaccinate or test requirement. Nobody has to vaccinate to keep their job. So in places where there's high concern about the vaccine, we'll probably see more people who are reluctant to vaccinate and prefer to test, even if the mandate become operational.
If this round of mandates doesn't succeed in pushing vaccination numbers high enough, Biden's got more rules at his disposal.
Here are several other things that the federal government can do. One, the federal government can require vaccines for interstate and international travel. That's well within the part of the federal government. Just as it imposed searching requirements after 9/11, it can say you need to have a vaccine to travel between states or outside and inside the United States. Two, the federal government can impose vaccine requirements on commercial travel between states. So trains, freight trains, truckers, that's regulating interstate commerce.
In other words, more mandates that'll probably be fought over in court and once again challenged to the gates of hell.